Hello, everyone. We are live for the Marine Corps birthday. Happy 249th to our Leatherneck brethren. I got a couple DMs out to some Marines. We'll see if they join. If not, you're just gonna hear me. I guess just yap about the Marine Corps for a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. This wasn't really like super planned. You know what I mean? I hit up like a couple people and I know it's the middle of the day. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first Marine is going to join the show live from undisclosed location in the Midwestern bunker in Indiana. It's Mr. Pete. Buddy, what's up, man? Happy birthday, bro. Shit.
Joe, long time watcher of STD podcast, first time participant, man. I thank you for having me on the Marine Corps' 249th birthday. Pleasure to be here, man. Good to see you for sure.
Bro, you're representing your branch on one of the shows. I mean, you've up here with the likes of Tommy Chong now and Right Said Fred, all the legends.
Yeah.
This is great, bro.
You had some great ones within the past couple weeks, man. Definitely some local folks and everything else. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yes,
for
sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir. We got a bunch of locals coming on. We got Bill Squire coming on next Friday. Mr. Bill Squire, the one, the only. Nice. Oh yeah, man, it's been great. So, for those who don't know you, Pete, introduce yourself. Tell the audience a little bit. Most of you guys have seen Pete in the chat before. You've seen me in a couple selfies with Pete over the years. But tell those who like, hey, who the hell's Pete? Tell them about yourself, bro.
We met together, worked together. Seemed like the core group of guys that we worked with were Air Force veterans. A couple of us Marines. I know D couldn't be here today. Were you serious about leg day? Some sort of workout day? Does he really have leg day today?
I was being
or were you joking?
I was totally joking. I have no idea.
Jarhead. Anyways, yeah. We worked together, met at the VA, had some fun times when everybody went in the office, that's for sure. A little bit about me. I was in the Marine Corps, joined in towards the mid to late 90s. Didn't see any action, stuck around, re-enlisted, went reserves, and that's when I deployed. I went to Iraq twice, never to Afghanistan. All the fun stuff that entailed. Got out and went to work for the VA, 2013. So that was a couple years probably behind you, Joe, I think.
Right.
So been to work for them for about 12 years. It's been a great fit for me. My father was a Marine, end of World War II. He joined in 1945 when he was in boot camp. In August of that year, he was about to get out of boot camp and they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima, Nagasaki. So he was like, what am I going to be doing now? He was stopped in Guam, went to China. He was a China Marine, liberating the Japanese or repatriating them, getting the Japanese back to their home soil, kind of keeping on prisoners and doing that exchange. He went on to Hawaii before they were a state. Man, he had it tough, man. He had the best time in the Marine Corps, and his stories and his amount of pride that he saw in the Marine Corps probably what led me to join. I had two older half brothers. One was nearly 20 years older, near Vietnam. He wanted nothing to do with the military. The other half brother was went through college. He was on his way to college, so I don't blame him. But
Right.
my dad certainly instilled things in me that made me want to go in the Marine Corps. So it was a great experience for me. All in all, I think they're giving me credit federal time for 7 years, but all in all, I did like 13, close to 14 total time in the active duty plus reserves.
Right. Okay. Good deal, man. Good deal. Happy to have you aboard. Yeah. What was your basic in, man? Were you in San Diego or the one in Parris Island?
I went to boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina. For Marines, thank you. U.S. Marines, there's two boot camp locations for basic training, and that's San Diego, as Joe just said, San Diego, California, or Parris Island, South Carolina. There's a big rivalry Same training. I think I got it easy. South Carolina, we dealt with sand fleas, these little gnat type bugs that would just eat your skin alive and tear you up. But San Diego, I think I had it easy in Parris Island, South Carolina, because it was relatively flat, kind of below sea level there. Whereas San Diego is they got mountains and great big hills. So I think it was easier going to Parris Island, South Carolina. In all honesty, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I never admit that to what they call a Hollywood Marine that went out there
Marine.
in San Diego. But yeah.
Now, is it true that the basic training in San Diego is actually at the San Diego International Airport? Because I thought it's like right next door.
It is. To my knowledge, it is right near there. I think you can see the birds, the commercial airlines taking off to and from San Diego. In fact, I think a lot of San Diego's, the MCRD, Marine Corps Recruit Depot training area is not there in San Diego. They actually bus the recruits up a little bit north, even I think as far as like past Los Angeles for a lot of activities. But I mean, San Diego is beautiful. I the time that I spent there, more Coronado Bay, where SEALs do their the Navy SEALs do their training. That's a beautiful. Coronado's Bay is beautiful. But my former brother-in-law just graduated from just retired from the Marine Corps Air Station, which used to be home of Top Gun for a number of years, from the original Top Gun movie. They were in San Diego. Well, they gave up that air station in 1997, and they moved to Colorado, the Top Gun. So the Marine Corps took over that air station. So that's a Marine Corps air station in San Diego. My brother-in-law just graduated from there about 2 years ago now. So fabulous training area, beautiful weather. Can't beat Southern California. Real estate's a little high, but most of the training I think the recruits do is north of there, and they get put on a bus. So yeah.
Okay.
Now,
did you after you got out of, or did you have an MOS going in, or did you get picked in MOS when you were basic training?
No, I got assigned an MOS going in, which was 3551. I was a tow gunner and anti-tank missileman on trucks. So I got assigned that going in. So I did that for my initial enlistment. Not very much fun. The Marine Corps traditionally didn't have a lot of money. We were always the lowest on several totem poles. So the Marine Corps is a department of the Navy, and funding through us came from the Navy, the naval monetary, financially down. And we did not see a lot of money until Iraq started. And then we got most of the good. Then we started getting the really good gear once after 9/11. They said, "Hey, man, we might need these guys again. Let's start." Because I remember using, in basic, I don't know if you do too, we had flak jackets that seemed like that were left over from maybe not Vietnam. They weren't olive drab, OD green, but they were like the tricolor camouflage from like Beirut time frame. It seemed like they were easily 10 years old, if not older, the flak jackets, and they wouldn't have stopped any bullets. Well, then we started getting stuff like the modular tactical vest with the actual SAPI plates that would slide in and like stop bullets. And we started moving away. I wish Derek were here. He went to Iraq in the old style camis, but then we started getting digital camis, camouflage utilities that were in that digital type pattern.
The diamond thing, yeah.
Yeah, we started getting more money for funding for everything from up armored vehicles to equipment, better firepower, certainly a lot more money for everything like that. But it all started happening once we started Iraq and Afghanistan. Certainly picked up and should be. I mean, those were two of the longest conflicts the U.S. was involved in. in the history of the United States. 249 years is not a long time. It's not that old compared to our friends, your people that tune in to your show from across the pond. It's not a lot of time, man. 240 years is a drop in the bucket. I mean, compared to most European countries, and a lot of the traditions that the U.S. Marines have, we got from the British Marines for sure. Everything from our insignia. We have an eagle, globe, and anchor. I think the British Marines have a globe and laurel. We got a lot of traditions for our mess night, which, you know, a mess night's a big fun thing that we have with a unit. And I remember, like, you can't say, can we go use the latrine or the head? We can't hit the head. You got to retire to the head to shed a tear for Lord Admiral Nelson. And I'm like, who the fuck? I remember history, but not that well. And it wasn't until like years later, I was like, oh, Lord Admiral Nelson, till like that movie Master and Commander came out with Russell Crowe. And I'm like, oh, that's who fucking Lord Admiral Nelson is. So just little things like that. Most of our close order drill is from the British Marines. We were called leathernecks traditionally. The Marines were called leathernecks. We had these high leather collars that were, in all purposes, like ridiculous. They were so impractical. A sword. They were supposed to traditionally. They were like, oh, they're supposed to protect a saber or a sword from cutting their neck. That's not what it was for at all. It was for bearing to keep the head erect, so they wouldn't slouch or tilt their head back. Probably not so they could go to sleep. Man, just this little. Even our mascot, the United States Marine Corps mascot, is an English bulldog. I mean, that's of all the breeds that we could have picked, we jacked something from the British, the Royal Marines. But I mean, we are a proud bunch. As far as I know, only branch of the military, U.S. military, born in a bar, Ton Tavern, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we try to live by that all the time. Probably too much times.
Yeah, so it's no secret that the Marine Corps was founded in a bar. And that has to play into a lot of the traditions of the Marine Corps, in my opinion, because a lot of the Marine Corps guys I've met, you know, either when I was on active duty trips or, you know, I know just in my personal life, those guys like to party. That's one thing I loved about the Marines. They fucking threw down, bro. These guys would just party, and they didn't care. So I was like, that's why I'm kind of like Marine adjacent. I really fuck with the Marine Corps vibe. But would you say that, like, what was your first introduction into booze? You guys go home on A&T and it was like a, you know, fucking party, like an initiation, like you got to get drunk and walk the plank, or what's the deal there?
My first initiation into booze was Okinawa, Japan, where, you know, you talk about people, kids in the United States with the drinking age and the drinking laws, whereas they don't do that in most of the rest of the world. They don't have a drinking age. I mean, Okinawa, I got there, and I think it's changed since. It might have dropped back down to 20, but I got over there and there's no drinking age. So we would go hard. We would drink all night and get up. And over there, I think physical training would start at like 4:30, or we'd muster at 4:30 for physical training at 5. And I remember walking back in from town in Okinawa, and just these guys just sprawled out all over the training fields. Somehow they were gone by the time we got there, but we'd have a little wooden platform where the person instructing the physical training would stand up. And I remember guys passed out there, but by the time I got back, changed, and got ready for PT, they were gone somehow. But again, I spoke at mess night earlier, and that's probably the worst. Honestly, the worst I've ever been my whole life. I mean, as a deep a night could go, and as long as a night could go, and you would do shots. We would drink port wine, and there were little tiny glasses, and we would drink to the Marines of the 18th century, and we'd throw back this little shot of port wine, and then this is on top of beers and shots and everything else, and then they would bring out this beef and somebody would taste the beef and it was like, I find this beef tasty and fit for consumption. And then we would eat this rare, like it looked like prime, I guess like a prime rib. But on top of that and the port and the fact that I was only probably 18, maybe 19, and I'd never gotten, to that point, I'd probably gotten thrown up plenty of times, but I'd never remember getting that sick. And what I projected looked like pure blood. I was horrified. I remember thinking I was horrified before I passed out, but that was probably the worst that I had ever gotten in my entire, and probably to this day. 18, 19 years old, living abroad, not knowing what's going on. But yeah, those days were, I associate the Marine Corps with to be like college, but minus the chicks. There wasn't any women around, but good times for sure. Can't forget the brotherhood and the people I met and things like that for sure. Yeah.
The Marines tend to find, or the women tend to find the Marines somehow. I mean, you got Marine bases in the middle of nowhere, but you get broads in like Cleveland or Indiana or West Virginia, wherever, and then those come home with some random Marine boyfriend. Do you guys just I mean, you don't have to divulge your trade secrets, but in your opinion, do most Marines just the second they put on that uniform? I mean, the dress blues are the hottest, Pete. It's that's a good looking uniform. And they just post that on social media.
I think it's just a mentality. Clearly, I mean, if I was not the biggest of Marines. Most Marines have no neck whatsoever. I was the opposite. I was a tall, thin guy that was always the running ahead of the pack and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think it's introvert. Honestly, introvert until really. Probably till after I got out of the Marines, I would I remember stationed after Okinawa. I had a brief stop in Camp Pendleton, California, and then I was Camp Lejeune the majority of my time in North Carolina. We would go down to South Carolina to Myrtle Beach, and I mean, it was they're like, oh man, there's a car with Ohio license plates. Thorpe, my last name. They're like, Pete, you gotta go talk to them. I'm like, me, and they're like, yeah, they're from Ohio. You gotta go say something. And I'm like, all right. And that might be an in, but like I said, I was an introvert growing up, man. All during I was tall, thin, very skinny, very not outgoing whatsoever. Probably up until my late 20s. Again, I didn't go to Iraq until I was near 30 years old. So never really easy for me. But yes, I mean, the dress blues, once again, the uniform, some of the uniform stuff, not only the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor stole from the Globe and Laurel from the UK, from the British, from the Royal Marines, but the uniform is sharp. I think in all honesty, I think the officers dress blues are even sharper. I mean, with the dress blues that the enlisted Marines wear, enlisted meaning, I know Joe, but officers are usually go to college and they get commissioned to become officers. Enlisted being those, out of high school that might make a career out of it. I certainly did not, but we had the dark blue top and with the red piping and the buttons, and it looked sharp. But then we had the light blue pants with a red stripe, and everybody's like, I don't, some people were like, I don't get the difference in the color. Why? But the Marine officers had dark, tunics, the dark blouses, the dark trousers, and they had, some had that leather sash across. They even had the Marmaluke sword, as opposed, I've got the NCO, the non-commissioned officer sword tattooed on me, but they had a different Marmaluke sword that was a different handle, that was granted to them from the Barbiturian pirates that they fought, long ago off the coast of Africa. They had a cooler sword, they had a cooler, in my opinion, uniform, but it certainly didn't help. Yeah.
All right, so when you're in basic and they're teaching you Marine Corps traditions, how soon into basic are you learning that? Like for the Air Force, we'd learn theory every now and then. You'd be in the classroom a couple days a week, I guess. But it doesn't seem to me, at least, it was like pounded into your skull. Like how much Marine, like you ask any Marine, they're gonna tell you the ton tavern, they can tell you all the general orders and stuff, you know, this and that, whatever. How soon into basic were they just pounding you with tradition? Like, you guys are a special unit, that kind of stuff.
I remember learning a lot of history from what I remember, like the Battle of Chapultepec down towards, you know, off Mexico, Spanish-American War, again, the Barbary pirates there off the horn of the coast of Africa, and battles there, all the way up, I think, through probably Vietnam, Way City. I know you mentioned the other day, Full Metal Jacket, the Battle of Way, and the house-to-house fighting that went on there. Korean War, certainly almost nearly, they used to call it the Forgotten War, but maybe not so much anymore, but only lasted, a couple years. But I'm surprised to hear recently, you know, with all the Pacific landings that we did, the majority of the Pacific landings in the Pacific during the World War II were not done by the Marine Corps at all. I mean, if you look at all of the landings done, the amount of lives lost, I mean, the Army way overshadows anything that the Marine Corps did. I don't, again, certain battles, Peleliu and Tarawa, and the last amphibious was Okinawa, the Battle of Okinawa, Iwo Jima, just these certain battles, just, of course, the raising of Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima was just huge in our tradition, and that kind of cemented the Marine Corps. You know, they've talked over the not only decade, but probably 100 years of the Marine Corps going away, and it still has not, due to certain battles that we faced and fought. But you taught quite a bit of that knowledge and history to us in the Marine Corps throughout time. So I don't know when it started in boot camp. I want to say phase 1, but might have been 2. Seemed like there was never any downtime in Marine Corps boot camp. It was always one thing or another, and either physical training or sitting around in a classroom, which by classroom was usually sitting your butt on the cement floor trying to stay awake. And yeah, it was tough, but somehow we did it. So yeah.
Fuck, staying awake was rough, man. Now, did you guys had we had dorm guard, I think you guys probably call it Firewatch, I imagine what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you have to, how many people are in your typical basic training platoon? And then
I almost remember somehow there were 64.
Okay.
Right around there. And that is very large for, obviously, for any, you know, if you got three fire teams in a squad, 3 fire teams to a platoon, 3 platoons to a company, 3 companies to a battalion. Was it 4 battalions to a regiment? The 64 number doesn't make any sense. We had 64 in ours, and I think we probably started with more. We might have wound up with less, but through attrition, people dropping out. I do remember a few people quitting, refusing to train, things like that. It was right around 60, which doesn't make sense at all. We had a senior drill instructor. All of mine were all sergeants. We didn't have a staff NCO in ours, which was kind of odd for a platoon, but I think we were a tighter platoon than any others, at least in our company, if not the battalion. We won some awards. They call it a flight, I think, 3 platoons, even though again, boot camp's a little non-traditional as far as the structure of the unit. But 64, we probably started with more than that, probably had some drop, refusal to train, just didn't want to do it. They found out, I remember we had one guy found out we were doing PT, we were lying down doing flutter kicks, like kicking back your legs, laying down, or doing push-ups or sit-ups. He got bit by ants. He got, you can't be allergic to anything. He got booted. But it was about 60. So we had one senior drill instructor, and then 3 others, which 2 drill instructors, and then what they call the heavy. The heavy was usually the newest drill instructor, and he'd come across as the harshest. He'd be definitely the most strict when it came to everything. But ours is a good platoon from what I remember. I know we took the rifle range, some other maybe close order drill, and I don't even think for our series, the 3 platoons that were in our series, I think for the other 6 platoons, I think we took both the rifle range and close order drill. Maybe not the final physical training test, the 3-mile run and the pull-ups and sit-ups, which is probably changed by now. But I don't think we took that. But the rifle, anyways, we had a close unit, yeah.
Now, what happened to guys who got failure training or kicked out or whatever? I know in the Air Force they had like I can't remember exactly what they call it, like motivational platoon kind of med hold, I think they called it, something like that. Basically, you go sit there until they process it, and half the time they'd be sitting there until it'd be like basic training for the Air Force is 6 weeks. Now it's 8 weeks. I know, laugh, haha. But like these guys basic training would be 6 weeks, and these guys would be there for 9 weeks and stuff like that. So if you see you broke your leg or whatever, and you say, look, I can't do this no more, and they're gonna get kicked out. How long would that take? Was that like a real big thing when shit happened? I know the Marines very teamwork oriented. I mean, when somebody just couldn't do it or they broke down or whatever, what's the deal there?
I honestly don't know the background or the particulars behind that. I know when somebody dropped in our platoon, they refused to train. I remember one guy just broke down. He couldn't stand being away from his significant other, girlfriend, fiance, whatever. He just sat down and started crying. They removed him and we didn't see him again. So I don't know. I would think just separated the guy administratively, whatever punitive stuff happened, and just sent him home. Now, guys that were physically hurt, they would go to, like you said, they called it physical conditioning, PCT. We jokingly called it pork chop platoon. And as you know, from working with the Veterans Affairs and working with veterans, or maybe not, they call it. They used to use terms and language like malingering and to be a squad bay commando. You're not going to keep going to see the corpsman. We call them corpsmen instead of medic. You're not going to keep going to sick bay and claiming that you're sick all the time and miss out on training. You're going to just, you're going to do what you're told and ignore the physical pain. But there were people that got hurt that obviously couldn't continue. They got picked up by the pork chop platoon, which is PCT, and I can't remember so many acronyms what that stands for. They could be there for quite a while. I think unless they were actually separated by the Department of the Navy or the DOD, unless they were separated, they could be there for months. And quite honestly, and a lot of them didn't want to give up. They wanted that title of. They wanted the title of Marine, and they wanted to continue on and keep going, and didn't want to quit. And there's no telling how long that could be. But the PCT could go on a number of months. And I remember picking up a couple guys, and one guy was almost done with boot camp, and we were too when he came to join our platoon, and he knew everything that we knew. He was good with close order drill and everything else. So there is a chance, unless they want to give up and want to throw in the towel, or they are separated beyond their control, they can stay there quite a while down in even boot camp, basic training, and pick up with another platoon and graduate.
That'd be a freaking long. Can you imagine? I mean, that's some dedicated shit. I mean, how long is basic training for the Marines? Is it 13 weeks?
Just about 3 months. Yeah.
Okay.
13, 14 something weeks. Yeah. Which, looking back now that I'm, creeping up on 50, it doesn't seem like that long a period of time at all. But I mean, back then it was like, wow, man, you just out of high school, you just out of 17, 18-year-old kids, somebody was like in their 20s, we call him like grandpa, man. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
If you had anybody that was like, hey, Gramps, what are you doing here? The guy's like, I'm only 29. And they're like, yeah, you're the grand old man of the Marine Corps. They seemed old at that time, man. Just our drill instructors seemed like they were, I don't even know, still in my mind, I still can't picture how old they were. They still seemed like they were 40, and I know they could have been even close to that back then. So it's weird how the mind works like that. But yeah, I couldn't imagine being down there any longer than I was. Being away from your family, and Marine Corps boot camp's a little different. No phone. I would think even to this day, no internet, no socialization. We didn't get weekends or nights off, and if we did, it was all preparing stuff, shining your boots, or getting stuff ready for the next day. It wasn't any like free time where we had time to go about and go to an enlisted club or drink. That came later, certainly, but it wasn't like that in at least boot camp when I was there. Things have certainly changed, though. Now, to my knowledge, again, boot camp is integrated. So even for the Marine Corps, within a few years ago, I think it's men and women now. They don't birth together. They don't stay in the same barracks. They're separate there. But I think, as far as I know, it's males and females, and they're integrated, and they train together. So that's news to me. Parris Island, traditionally, South Carolina, the only one that used to do female recruits. San Diego did not. All of the females all across the United States used to go to Parris Island, South Carolina. I think that's still the case, but now, from what I know, that the boot camp is integrated. So no idea how that's working out. Anyway, yeah, that was all. That's how I know I'm old Corps, what they call old Corps instead of new Corps. Yeah, it's definitely a new Marine Corps nowadays. But
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea how the Air Force does it now, but I know, like, we used to have every now and then what they call it a sister flight. You'd have, because sometimes you'd have like a male flight, you'd have your brother flight, whatever. Every once in a while you'd have a sister flight. But yeah, it was two totally different barracks and shit like that.
Okay, yeah.
All right, now here's some weird random questions about basic training, and bear with me because everybody goes through this, but nobody ever talks about this. When you first got to basic, how long did it take you to take a shit? How many days?
Wow. Man, I don't even remember, to be honest. My metabolism, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. My metabolism was probably messed up for the first 40 years of my life, as again, being tall and thin. But I don't remember. I do remember in the squad bay, we have no doors on the stalls. There's no doors on there. And that's for a number of reasons. They say it's for a fire hazard or something like that. I do remember just absolutely getting screamed at by probably the heavy, the drill instructor that's the meanest, because I wasn't done fast enough, and I don't remember where we had to be, but he was just absolutely screaming at me. And there's nothing worse than for me than when you're on the head, just trying to go, just dude, it's nature calling. I don't remember the first. It was probably a few days easily. I would think that was always a good thing in the field. I mean, we would. I don't know if Joe, I know you remember meals ready to eat, or MREs, the packaged meals that we would get, and we would always look for like the granola. It was called the oats bar. This big oats bar that was just condensed, packed. It was like a big giant canister of Quaker oats that was condensed into one single bar, and just we would eat that right away, so we wouldn't have to poop like right away. But yeah, I honestly don't remember how my first time in boot camp. That's probably the only time I really remember having to go and go at length, and then I was getting screamed at, like, hurry up, somebody in your face, like screaming at you, and it was a wild time. Yeah.
Dude, it took me like 5 days or so.
Probably. Yeah.
There was it was like the first. I mean, a lot of people, I imagine a lot of vets, if you're a vet out there, you could chime in on the taking a shit thing, and basically you're so scared, and I want to say they put some in the food. I don't know, but it's like it took me 5 days. I remember another guy took like 2 weeks. So where the fuck is all this food going when you're eating for 2? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous, bro.
Yeah.
What? Shouts out to the beautiful 21 people checking us out. This is awesome. We're having a great time with Mr. Pete out here. Now, going back to the weird question thing, the masturbation situation in basic training, you guys had open ass stalls, like there was nowhere to go. Did you guys just suck it in for the whole time? It was
Horrible.
about 2-3 weeks for me.
Horrible. Not to get too graphic, I didn't until like a few days before we got out of boot camp. It happened a few days, and I don't remember. I don't think I had to go off memory. I think I got something sent to me that probably got through the Foot Locker inspection. Somehow it got through, so it wasn't exactly pornographic, but it was bikini clad girls or something like that. And you want to you asleep? Oh, okay. It was bikini clad girls or something, and it finally was a few days before I got out, and I was actually kind of worried by what I saw. It didn't look right after 3 months, and as they say, call it young, dumb, and full of cum. It didn't look good at all. It looked more like a coffee coming out. I was like, what the hell is that, dude? It was bad. So it was probably 2-3 days before I knew I was going home, and I'm like, I better make sure this thing still works. So it was pretty rough. Anyways, yeah, that was my only experience with masturbation. I mean, I just tried when you're in the rack, but when you're in a bunk bed with, like I said, with me, nearly 60 other guys all around you, even like Firewatch, I didn't want to be the one caught like with my pants down, as they say. So it was rough. It was didn't really happen until I was nearly out of there. Did you? I don't know if you got the chance at all, but I mean,
it was my story is like this, man. It was like 2-3 weeks in, or so I can't remember exactly there, and I was randomly in the laundry room doing something with whatever, and they had bathrooms there, and there was nobody around, and I was just fucking, I was, how when you're done peeing, you shake it, and I was like, fuck, this feels really good, and I just got into it, and my goodness, like you said, fucking a pow, it was fucking crazy, and then after that, it was probably every 2-3 days or so, usually in the middle of the night, go take a shit and fucking, figure it out. I never did it like right in the bed there. Now, was your guys' beds like? Because in the Air Force, it was kind of weird. Like there was 2 bays, right? You'd walk in, and there'd be 2 bays, and like the first maybe 10, and there would be 2 aisles. You could start to walk right down the middle, and the first maybe 10-ish beds were all just single beds, and then the last like 3 over towards the wall were all double beds. Was you guys all doubles, singles? How was it set up?
Ours was much like. The only difference, if you remember the boot camp or basic training scenes from Full Metal Jacket, ours was very much almost exactly like that. There were stanchions or pillars. Both sides of the squad bay were port and starboard side were both double racks. There was no wall lockers. There was only a foot locker for every Marine there. That's it. So it was very stripped down, very basic. Every field day, it seemed like on Sunday before or after chapel was the easiest day that we had. And that was basically for going to chapel. Even if you weren't religious, if you were of a different religion, it didn't matter. You were going to chapel because otherwise you don't want to be stuck doing whatever it was they were doing behind. So everybody went to chapel. If you were Jewish, I don't think we had anybody Muslim. It wouldn't surprise me. Zeke, anything Zeke. I don't think anything like that. But I mean, if they were, they went to chapel. But I remember on our field day on Sundays, we would pick up the racks, the double racks. Everything was off that whole side of one side of the squad bay at a time, and we would absolutely clean all the way down, move everything back, and do it again with the other side. A full sweep down, a full. The floors weren't waxed or anything, so it wasn't like the Johnson's paste wax and the buffer. But we would just move everything completely off that side of the floor, move it back after a thorough cleaning. And then for the rest of the day, we got to write letters home. We get to polish boots. We got to jaw jack. We might have had an impromptu class or something like that. But Sundays was the easiest day, but very little furniture. Everybody slept in it. I'm curious, who slept in the single racks for you guys? The single box.
It was just random. They just when you got there, they just assigned it. Like it was I was there. I had 2 flights because I got set back in the 1 flight, and both the times I think I had doubles, which was nice. I think. Well, how did you guys hang up? You guys only had the Foot Locker. How did you hang up your uniforms? Was it like on the end of the bed or?
We did not hang up anything. At least when I was there in the Marine Corps, everything was folded and put into the Foot Locker. We didn't press the utility camouflage uniforms. We didn't press them out. We didn't have rank insignia. Normally, we did not blouse our boots at the bottom, like we would when we got out into the fleet, into the real world of the Marine Corps. We didn't blouse our boots at the bottom, so that blousing meaning you tuck it up above the laces of the boot, so you don't get them caught on your end of your trousers, end of your pants aren't getting caught on anything. But very stripped down, very basic. It's funny. I saw a video real recently of a boot camp recruit that got to an airport somewhere, and I would think that would be San Diego, not South Carolina, but it was just on the news a couple weeks ago that a basic training, a boot camp recruit, as you're called, everything is. Usually it's the sir sandwich, unless you're told not to, like sir, yes, sir, sir, no, sir, I, sir, I being yes for the Marines. But everything was I recruit. There was no I, there was no me. It was this recruit. This recruit needs to go to the head or, latrine. This recruit needs to go to sick call. This recruit, there was no I or me. And it was all, you learn that very quickly. Probably in the processing of the pickup platoon before we even started the real boot camp. But everything moved pretty quickly from what I remember. It was pretty intense right off the rip. Not real bad, because at first you go through the processing and you get all your gear and equipment. Then you go to a squad bay and you wait for picking up enough recruits to start your platoon. And I thought that, I'm going to be honest, I thought that was boot camp when I got there, and we're kind of marching around, and the non-commissioned officer, it was either a corporal or sergeant, kept saying, "You guys are in trouble when you get to your platoons and your drill instructors." And I didn't really quite understand that, because it was a few days. I'm like, this isn't bad, and we're just kicking around, just doing nothing in a squad bay every day. And then, like I said, you go down and you get to your squad bay, you unpack your stuff, at least partially. They introduce your drill instructors, and then they unleash all fury on you. But it was a fun experience. Like I said, 3 months back then seemed like a lifetime, whereas now it's like 3 months is nothing. But always a good time.
The older you get, the more time flies. It's
for sure.
When you're 18, 3 months is how much percentage of your life. When you're 50, fucking 3 months is fucking. It's great. All right, so most of the time when people equate Full Metal, basic training in the Marines, it's all Full Metal Jacket, like everything. I mean, it's everybody in the service, I think, has seen Full Metal Jacket. It's my favorite war movie of all time, probably a lot of favorite. It's just a great movie. Now, describe just overall. I mean, you've seen Full Metal Jacket, I'm sure, 100 times. 1, did you see it before you went to basic? And then 2, compare the two. Compare your experience. Compare like how obviously not. You didn't have somebody fucking sit in this. Do the Leonard Lawrence thing. But like aside from the last 5 minutes of that movie, or that first part of the movie, compare and contrast the two, if you would.
So, I think you mentioned this the other day, Joe, on one of yours, the last segment you did. I did not see Full Metal Jacket until after I got out of boot camp. Now, we were in a class. We were in one of the classes, and they showed clips of the Firewatch scene, like at the end of the basic training shots. And I was amazed because I was like, wow, that, we didn't wear those steel pot helmets anymore. That I think they were spray painted or painted, something like that. We didn't do that for Firewatch anymore, but it looked very similar. We watched a couple clips from Full Metal Jacket. I'm like, what is that? And recruit next to me was like, dude, you've never seen Full Metal Jacket? And I don't know what kind of rock I had been living under, but that was what movie was 87 or something like that. I think I went to boot camp mid 90s, and I'm like, I didn't remember ever seeing it. So I didn't see it all the way through until I got out. And then I was like, wow, that's very similar. Again, the only thing that I don't remember is walking in the middle of the squad bay. We would never, ever be allowed to walk. If they called somebody like, what was it, Private Snowball, he'd go running across the squad bay and, sir, Private Snowball reporting is ordered, sir. We would never walk in the middle of the squad bay or even run unless we were granted permission previous. We'd always have to go down to the end, either port or starboard side, and back up. Never running through the squad bay. But other than that, I mean, of course, there wasn't the physical abuse that supposedly they had, but I mean, we had some issues behind closed doors or in the either the gear locker, which is this big closet at the end, or in the head, which the bathroom. We'd have stories of stuff like the drill instructors got rough or whatever else, but all in all, there wasn't the open, I'm gonna choke or hit or punch. Yeah, there wasn't anything like that. And I think it was in 1957 was Ribbon Creek in Parris Island. I'm almost positive of the date, 56 or 57, and a drill instructor who was either a World War II or Korean veteran got severely intoxicated and marched his platoon into a swamp of Parris Island, and quite a few of them drowned. And from that was what began this thing called Mothers of America, and they were intervening and they wanted transparency between what was happening at Marine Corps boot camp, all of the boot camps, but certainly with Marine Corps boot camp, Ribbon Creek. And I don't have anything to look it up on because I'm on my phone right now, but I think Ribbon Creek was 56 or 57. So kind of a lull there in between Korea and the beginning of Vietnam, at least our interjection into Vietnam, which was very early 60s. Everybody thinks of the Vietnam War as late 60s, 70 into the 70s, but we were there certainly. But I mean, I think with Marines and tradition and the drill instructors, you want people to suffer as much as you did, and it was probably with a lull in between U.S. conflicts. They didn't want to soften up the U.S. Marine Corps, and they would do everything they could to preserve that honor, tradition, and the harshness of the environment that they were in, and they would, certainly inflict that. I don't think, certainly that never should be in training, in my opinion, causing somebody's death, and that's what happened at that incident. But yeah, other than that, Full Metal Jacket, I mean, was again pretty accurate, man. And again, I didn't see it till all the way through until I got out of boot camp, and I was like, wow, that's it. Great, like you said, great movie. One of my favorites, for sure.
Okay, now where were you? Were you still on active duty, or were you in the reserves by 9/11?
I had gotten off active duty. I got off active duty in '99. I had joined the reserves. I was in college. I was doing a very early morning, not that early. I'm on Eastern time. I'm on New York City. You are too. We're on Eastern time. I was on. I remember doing in math class, and the first plane struck, and everybody, the math teacher. We went on break. Came in, and she was like, "There was an accident, and a plane ran into the tower." I remember later on in the class, she came in and said, a second plane has hit the other tower, and they're now believing it to be terrorism. My first instinct was, we're going to war. I mean, we're it's on, man. Who are we going to battle with? I actually remember, they finally dismissed school, and very early into cell phones, man. I mean, maybe I had one, but it wasn't very good. But I remember going down after school was let out. They canceled classes. The college closed. I remember going down to the lobby and they canceled classes. I went to a payphone, I think, called my unit, my reserve unit right there in good old Cleveland, Ohio. And I was like, all right, are we getting activated? And the guy's like, no, we're getting calls all day. We're not, who are we going to war with? We don't even know anything about this. But my mind at the time was so, like most of America was, wow, man, this is heavy. I mean, it was a huge time for the United States. Several other countries too. I mean, London had this subway bombing. I mean, there's always terrorist events all over the globe, but on that scale, and I was still reserves. I'm like, man, what is going on? Am I going to have to quit school completely? Am I going to have to quit my job? Am I going to get activated? And then really just nothing really. I stayed in the reserves, but nothing really happened. But I was off active duty at that time.
All right. Well, was your unit part of a rotation, like a national rotation? How did you volunteer for it? How did you end up on your first tour to the desert?
My unit was 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines. My reserve unit there was in Brook Park, Ohio, where they're going to move the Cleveland Browns, apparently. Okay. You know that, right? So we were there on Smith Road, which is West 150th. It's called Smith Road at that park. We were a cold weather unit traditionally, and we did cold weather training on several occasions. Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. We went to Fort Drum, New York, home of the 8th Mountain Rangers. We went to one other, Alaska, one year. And then very quickly, as Afghanistan and Iraq started progressing, we picked up and we started doing more, certainly warm weather training. We moved from a cold weather unit to warm weather unit very, very quickly. I did not deploy with them initially. They went in 05, 06. So I was still in the reserves, but at that point, I was mobilization command out of Kansas City, Missouri. I was doing that training in Korea. I think maybe you and I talked about that. Instead of 1 week in a month and 2 weeks in the summer, by 2004, 2005, I was going to Korea twice a year and spending a few weeks over there. Doing training in Korea. And so it was much easier. So I missed the deployment with the unit that I was with, and I missed very much that I got to be with them. They lost 48 Marines, 48 deaths during that deployment from Brook Park, and most of them were around the Cleveland area. It was very tough. I had trained and known most of them. A large portion of their tactical, their sniper platoon, their stay platoon, they lost their lives. They were ambushed. I think their Overwatch fell asleep, and one of their interpreters got paid to rat them out their location, and they got ambushed. So I mean, it was a tough deployment. I didn't get to go, but I was reserves and certainly volunteer. I mean, I could have gotten out probably at any time beyond then, because not only did my 4 years active, but my 4 years initial ready reserves. So generally, when you sign a contract nowadays with the United States military, at least, and I've talked to British Marines, with the Royal Marines, and it's been a long time. Most of them, when they go in, it's for life. I don't know what their contracts look like. And I know there's different ones with the U.S. military as well. You can do sometimes 2 years active duty, but for the most part, for the majority of the Marines, at least, it's 4 years active duty, 4 years initial ready reserves, where you have to be ready or expected to be called up if under major conflict or something like that happens. So I remember going. I was reserves. I volunteered. I went to another unit in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I attached to an active duty unit and deployed. I remember several times though, running into somebody that I knew, and it's like, hey, what are you doing back in? You're back in what they call a suck. You're back into it, and sure enough, they got recalled. They got called up back into active duty and pulled into doing what they were doing before. And it was kind of weird, like seeing somebody hadn't seen at that point for a number of years overseas somewhere. But yeah, so I deployed twice, and it, again, wasn't until I was near 30 years old and a lot older, and certainly the first time was a lot more harrowing than the second time. Second time was a lot easier, but some tough points of deployments. Ramadan is a traditional Muslim ceremony, and it varies on what the calendar day is in a month, a year. But they knew we were only vehicles on the road, and they knew we were the only ones that were going to be out on night convoys and missions. And man, it was we got hit hard. But all in all, never forget the time that I did overseas.
Okay, so you did twice. What was your typical day? Was it on base? Was your typical day out patrolling? What were you?
At that point, I was more into logistics. My first tour was more of a observer and observation, traveling around Iraq for the most part. We would rent out houses, which sounds strange, but we would remember quite often it was like, hey, we give somebody some money, say, hey, I want to rent your house, and they would gladly pick up and move. It sounds absolutely bizarre, but we would go up to the roof of their house and just observe what we could and report back everything that we did. Very, very, very strange times. But we normally we'd give up and like go back downstairs, and then we heard some rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, some gunfire, and we go back up and like, what's going on? There's nothing going on, and we go back downstairs, and then we hear gunfire again. So there's a lot of traveling around Iraq. I was based out of TQ. So it's very similar in the place that I was stationed both times, both kind of Al Anbar province west of Baghdad, kind of more along the Euphrates than the Tigris River. It's crazy to think, man. It's like the cradle of civilization is what they call it, man. The Tower of Babel was there. We were right very much near the Tower of Babel from the Bible. They tried to build a tower to heaven, man. It just Sanskrit and everything else, and that's where very, very, very early civilization started and began. And whether I believe we should have been over there or not is a whole nother point exactly. But I was very glad that I got to go experience it. Not only the first time, which was probably a lot more strenuous than the second, but I wanted to go back over there. And if I can keep other Marines alive through training or my experience or telling things, I certainly will. So that's what happened. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate that, brother. If I never told you that, man, that's awesome, dude. It's fucking awesome, brother. Now, when you was over there, this is a random question I just thought of, because I was there and I was in my 30s. I was 32, maybe 33. And I was in, God damn, my memory's blank because I was smoking this good weed, brother. But God, what was the name of that town? Not Tikrit. Tikrit was north of us, I think. It was in northern Iraq, not Mosul. It was one south of that. Kirkuk. It was in Kirkuk. Okay. And I forgot. And everywhere around base, like for those who don't know, the Iraq used to be a dictatorship, obviously, and it was ran by Saddam Hussein. So everywhere on base and everywhere around Iraq, there's murals of Saddam and this and that. But on base or everywhere there was a place or a tribute to Saddam, they chipped the Saddam face out. Like the Saddam face was chipped out and everything. They still had the body and everything, but just the face was chipped out. So you'd be like a chipped out. Was it like that when did you ever notice that when you was out there traveling?
So, yeah. By then most of the stuff was already gone. Yeah. I don't remember seeing many murals probably passing through in town. I'm kind of glad we were on my second tour. Our FOB, Forward Operating Base, or the battalion area was in HIT. Well, it was pronounced Heat, but it was very much near Al-Assad. And I remember the mosque, there was a mosque on base, and I couldn't believe it was still standing because we would get indirect mortar fire every once in a while there, but I guess they got mortared pretty badly before we got there. In the years before we got there, walking mortars down the flight line and everything else. And I was surprised that mosque was still in the shape that it was, supposedly off limits to us, but we went in there and I was like, wow, there was still some stained glass and everything else in there. But again, kind of a, in my opinion, kind of a shame. Everything that, as much of a dictator and a ruthless person as Saddam Hussein was, everything that he built up, we essentially destroyed when we were there, in my opinion. So the first tour that I did, I was kind of attached to an artillery unit because I didn't get to go with 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines. I went with an artillery unit, which was great. I was forward observing for them and everything else and giving them intel. The second tour that I went, I bumped into some of those guys, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Well, we can't fire artillery in Iraq anymore. It's we can't do it. It causes too much destruction." I'm like, "Well, what are you doing?" They're like, "Well, we're attached to an engineer unit, and we're building stuff. We're helping them build roads and build schools." So they were, in a sense, building the stuff that we had destroyed in Iraq 2 years before. And I'm like, at the time, I'm thinking, what sense does that make? I mean, we got schools in Cleveland, Ohio, and in other parts of the U.S. I remember that school roof collapsed in East Cleveland somewhere, and I'm like, the gymnasium, and I'm like, we're over here spending all this money. And like I said, right or wrong, there's morals and whatever. Not going to get into it, but I'm like, this is just all the resources and the money we spent, and whether there were weapons of mass destruction over there or not. Like you, it's kind of cool going to see, like, oh, cool, I got a rug with, really cool stitched and everything else. But at the same point, it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing over here? We're doing stuff that drones flown and, somebody sitting back at a workstation in Saudi Arabia, maybe even Las Vegas, Nevada, they could be flying those drones in and doing all the work that we're doing. But whatever. Guess they needed to put a face to what we were doing and everything like that. But yeah, sorry, that was a long answer, man.
Oh, no problem, brother. The war machine keeps on turning, man. Now, I'm trying to do the math in my head. Were you there when Saddam was either arrested or hung or killed or anything like that? Because I'm trying to think. I remember it, and this is a weird term, but I remember at the time they filmed the video of Saddam getting hung, and that video leaked. We were all watching it back then. We were twisted 06, 07. It was like right around, I think it was December 06 when he died, when he got hung. Were you over there when that happened, or what was your reaction at the time to that?
I don't think I was over there. Somehow I remember watching it too, but maybe I was right in between, because I was 05, 06, 07, 08, late 05, 06, 07, 08. So maybe I was in between. I don't remember. I don't think I was over there when they found him or when he was finally tried, and I don't remember. And again, my reaction was like, all right, well, that guy's gone, but who's coming next? Like you, so I ran convoys, I did logistics, whatever, depended on the mission, I guess, what I was doing. But for the most part, I was running convoys, and the longer convoys, not the fast teams. But I remember my interpreter was sitting in a cab with me, and he was like, "Look over to that village." And I was like, "Yeah, we've been through there." And he's like, so when the call went out for Iraqi police, there were insurgents there, and they all raised their hand. And so the U.S. made them Iraqi police. We trained them. They were on the U.S. government payroll. And this is a little hamlet. This is a little town that we would pass through, kind of in between where it hit and Al Assad Air Base was, and they were trained. We were training them, funding them, and they would have all the rights of an Iraqi police officer. They would kick in doors, seize what they want. They would stop vehicles. They would, again, stockpile munitions on the government payroll. Just ridiculous, man. So, I mean, that's my thought. Anytime I would think of stuff like that, man, that was like, where are these dollars going? Who's going to be next? I mean, we're still over there probably not even unofficially, but we're still in Iraq. We're still in Syria. We're still, probably got people in Turkey, and who knows, all around Iran, waiting to see that. I was hoping with democracy would break over there with all those protests they were doing in Iran a year or two ago now. I guess my thoughts when Saddam Hussein was executed was like, all right, well, there goes that guy. Who's next?
Right. I was in Iraq when Bin Laden was, and for some reason I was just that just felt like validation. I don't know. I'm kind of weird, but because I had no part of it. I mean, I never left the base and practically never left the air terminal. You know what I mean? But man, when I saw on CNN like we got him, I was like, fucking A, man. I was like, yes, yeah. I was going crazy.
I remember getting a voicemail when a few voicemails. In fact, I think I still got them saved on my phone to this day. When we got Osama bin Laden, I think it was 5/1/11, like May 1st, 2011, I think. Mm-hmm. But I remember I still have voicemails. I can pull them up on my phone when we got him. And again, when you take somebody out like these. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into politics and everything else that's going on with Tel Aviv and everything over there in Hamas and their conflict with Israel, because it's not the right time. But it just, you squash one thing and then another thing pops up, and I think with the U.S. and NATO and the UN interjecting constantly for whatever reason in other places of the world, mostly for oil, it just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. But,
now the war machine keeps on turning, like Led Zeppelin said, bro. President Eisenhower said, beware of the military-industrial complex. And if there is one statement in this country that couldn't be more fucking spot on than when Ike said that back in, I don't know, 62 or 61, whatever, that one's it. They will make up reasons to go to war so they could fund the war machine and keep the war on turning. And the U.S. military is phenomenal. Love the military. We keep the main purpose of the military, for those who don't know, in my opinion, is obviously defense of the nation. But our nation is pretty isolated. Nobody's really going to attack the homeland. It's really to keep the free trade open. I mean, if you look at where our bases are, there's no secret they're by the Strait of Hormuz. A lot of stuff in Asia, because that's where a lot of trade goes. I mean, that's where everything goes, stuff around the world. But to keep the back ends, that's only a little bit of stuff they could get with that financing. To keep that going, you have to make up stuff, because there's tank plants, there's other stuff that just needs. It's a lot of jobs involved in defense, man. It is. I mean, there's buildings where they are giving stuff to both sides of the war. Like, this side of the building can't talk to this side of the building because they're different sides of the conflict. What even is that, Pete? You know, I mean, it makes no sense. Like, it's I don't know. At the end of the day, man, I think. I don't know. It's a weird future to think about. It really is, because, like, I mean, will these wars end? What happens when they do end? Will other people be happy? I mean, in the future, will we even have enough people to go to war in certain countries? Is it going to be by robots? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you look at historically, a lot less people have died in 90s, 2000s, et cetera, compared to back in the day. I mean, they lose entire 90% of their thing, and they'd be like, oh yeah, this is okay. We still won the battle. Now it's nothing like that. I mean, the casualties have went to the floor if you're looking at percentage wise. So that part's good. But I mean, the back end benefits, like you said, we work the VA. You see how much it is. I mean, the whole Afghanistan mess, Iraq, you're talking $2, $3, $4 trillion with all the benefits by the time it's all said and done. So much money. Like you said, why couldn't we just, do that for houses over here? But I mean, it's like you said.
Like you said, only 4%. I mean, well, I don't even think it was that it wasn't really high when the Vietnam conflict was going on. 16% of the population served. Now I think they're saying it's 4% of the U.S. population is serving in the military. It's just so small. The Marine Corps just within the past few years has given up tanks. We're not using tanks anymore. We gave the majority of our stockpiles to the Army. We're not spending the money in tanks because they're not mobile enough and not quick enough. And yeah, it's a great piece of armor and great piece of equipment, but we're moving on to other things. Mobility, like I said, robotic warfare is certainly in the future as well. I know we stressed out in the mid to late 90s going back to mount training, the urban warfare training, house to house fighting, rather than this woodland and jungle and desert training specifically into more urban warfare training. But now it seems like there's a drone for everything, man. I've seen a lot more with the Ukraine, again, not to get too much into politics, but with Ukraine, and who knows where that's going now that we got a new president here in the United States. But I mean, those drones that I've watched all those YouTube videos where a drone, which is hovering, doesn't even look like that complex or that expensive a drone, and it drops a grenade. It'll spot somebody in a trench and just release a grenade that explodes when it hits the ground. It's just amazing, man. I mean, yeah, I'm sure the percentage of the population is going to do nothing but decrease. But yeah, is what it is. So
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. We'd like to thank Pete for coming out here, man. Pete, no, you're new to the YouTube. This felt kind of cool. It felt like almost we were sitting at an AA meeting. I was like, hey, you come up and talk. And you're like, sure. And then we just did it, man. It was great. So you're new to the YouTube community. Plug your channel. Maybe necessarily haven't done all of it yet, but what you intend to do in the future, maybe your plans, that kind of stuff. And I can drop your link for you for sure.
What's for mine?
Yeah.
Mine never really launched. I started as this drunk Midwest dad, and I think my real YouTube handle is death before death, DB as in Delta Bravo Dishonor, Death Bravo for Dishonor, Death before Dishonor. But it never really launched, man. To be honest, I was going to make all these fun videos just with being I'm not even a new dad. I've got 3 boys, ages 6, 4, and 2. So they're all a bit younger, and I was going to make all these videos like, here's feeding a kid for first-time dads, but it never really launched. I bought a GoPro, or a generic GoPro at the time, and I was all pumped up and ready to do it, and it just, one thing led to another. I was even on paid parental leave through work, through the VA, which is amazing. I mean, that was like 3 months off work doing nothing. It was incredible, but it never really, I'm sorry to say, my channel never really launched. By all means, I'll throw the link in there if it ever really gets going. I doubt with all this gray in my beard, I'm having any more. Probably started back over a little too late as it
You probably get the snippety snip, bro. I'm just gonna say I got it in 2014. Yeah. It's been 10 years now. It's and we're at that age. You know what I mean? It's why what makes me laugh about you the most, Pete, is that like in 50 years or whatever, one of your kids is gonna be like, yeah, my grandfather was in World War II. And they'll be like, wait a minute. This math doesn't math.
Yeah, I mean? Yeah. It was that was me growing up the whole time. Like I was like, my dad's in World War II, and they're like, no, you mean your grandpa? And I'm like, no, dude, my dad was 50 when he had me, and 52 when he had my younger sister. So late, but not traditionally. Now my dad's grandfather we just came to the States in 1907. So my dad's dad was only 20 when he had him, so there was very young. But I mean, ever since then, my brothers are later too. My half brothers, they're later when they have their kids. So hopefully not too out of place. And it made sense for me. I was, like I said, a little bit got the deployments out of the way and got hopefully the majority of my drinking out of the way before I and a lot more financially sound. That's a big thing nowadays, man. Never know in a month, any given month over here, what 9/10 of a gallon of gasoline, which I don't even know how to equate that to a liter for your viewers over across the pond is, but gasoline is just everything's just ridiculous. And
it's even more for expensive for them.
yeah. I bet. And I don't know how to equate whose economic plans caused our Trump when he was in office last. Now, again, they're saying that might have been Obama's 10-year economic plan, and he lucked out. And you know, Biden and then Vice President Kamala had a bad run their 4 years. Again, I'm getting into politics too much. We'll see if Trump can bring it around. I don't know, man. I might be the only.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, we're all Americans, and the spirit of America, the Constitution, the reason they started this country to begin with.
Yeah. I got all these Marine buddies that like, I can't believe you're not a Trump supporter, and I'm like, it is what it is. I mean, he didn't serve in the military, and you know, he had bone spurs that magically appeared after he went through he went through ROTC school for a number of years, and then when it came time for his number to be pulled, he developed bone spurs. But whatever. Who knows, man? It is what it is. We just got to get through it. The Marine Corps is going to be around, hopefully, for at least the next 100 years. That's what they said at the raising of the flag on Mount Suribachi or Iwo Jima. Somebody, I think Admiral Chester Nimitz from the Navy said this is going to be the meaning of the Marine Corps for the next 100 years. So hopefully we'll be around. And next year, hey man, next year's 250. So that's what, a quarter of a millennial for pretty much the United States. So we'll see, man. I don't know. Things going the way they are. Will we be around in another 700 years plus? Maybe not. We'll see. But
we might be living on pods in the moon and everything like that, and maybe on Mars.
Yeah, right.
All right, but we're all gonna go spend some time with the family. Thanks to Pete for joining us. Don't forget Friday the 15th, Bill Squire is going to be here live. I don't know if he's going to be in the studio, but I'll definitely have him on. It's going to be a good one. And also November 23rd, Sunil Dan's going to be on, and November 30th, Dog Musher Robert Forto is going to be on. So thanks everybody for coming out, and we'll talk to you guys later. See you, Pete.
Thanks, guys.